Howdy again everyone, and Sony have just launched another potentially amazing new G Master lens onto the market. In fact, it's their first ever G Master macro lens, the FE 100mm f2.8 Macro GM OSS. It's a full-frame lens with a maximum magnification of 1.4 times, getting you quite a bit closer to your subject than a conventional macro optic does. And another ace up this lens's sleeve is that it's compatible with Sony's teleconverters as well, potentially taking you up to 2.8 times magnification, which is pretty crazy. This lens's quite bright maximum aperture of f2.8 also lets you get quite nicely out of focus backgrounds, so macro lenses such as these traditionally double up as portrait lenses in use as well. It also features highly advanced optical image stabilization, including Z-axis stabilization, as well as Sony's best available autofocus, weather sealing and fluorine coating for the front glass element, and a bunch of other features. They have truly thrown the kitchen sink at this one. The macro lens market on Sony E-mount is getting pretty crowded at this point though. Will this new G Master lens do enough to stand out? Well, let's find out. It's for Sony's E-mount cameras only, and its price is $1,500 or £1,400 here in the UK. I'd like to thank Sony UK for loaning me a copy of this lens and one of their 2x teleconverters for a week for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent review and they had no input into the video. Well, let's start by looking at its build quality. Getting it out of its box, I thought the lens was a little bigger than I was expecting it to be, but at the same time lighter weight. At 649 grams or just under 1.5 pounds, it's not heavy at all, although that's mostly because it's made of plastic. Unlike Sony's older metallic 90mm macro lens, there's a good amount of weather sealing around the rear of the lens as well. A whole host of controls crowd the lens's left side, including switches for full-time manual focus, a focus limiter switch, an iris lock for the lens's aperture ring, and a switch for the optical image stabilization. Here's some footage with the stabilization turned off and now turned on. Sorry for the very slightly out of focus footage here, but as you can easily see, the stabilization is doing a wonderful job for video work, and it's well behaved when tilting and panning as well. It's Sony's most advanced stabilization yet, even slightly stabilizing the Z-axis, although as usual for any lens, stabilization gets much less effective as you focus at macro distances. Then we get a plastic aperture ring. In common with most other G Master lenses today, it can be set to turn with clicks at every third of an f-stop or completely smoothly for video work, and it can be locked in or out of A or camera controlled mode. I really like that feature. A unique feature of the lens is its lovely focus ring at the front. Well, not quite unique, it's similar to the 90mm lens actually, but still pretty cool. If you want to shoot in autofocus, push it forwards and turning the ring won't do anything at all once you've done that, unless you have full-time DMF turned on. To switch over to manual focus, pull that ring down and the focus motor will electronically move itself to the position indicated. It won't stay in the position that you autofocused to, but the ring does at least turn really smoothly and precisely. It's also possible to push the focus ring up to shoot in autofocus mode, but then pre-adjust the manual focus distance at the bottom with a bottom ring, ready for when you decide to switch back again. An interesting feature, but perhaps not one that you'll use often. The manual focus ring works with the focus motor quite responsively, but one thing you will notice is some absolutely enormous focus breathing. The lens zooms way in as you focus more closely, which will make this lens difficult for video makers to work with. In fairness though, that is par for the course for a macro optic such as this. The lens's autofocus motor is accurate, silent, and reasonably quick in single-shot autofocus mode. Switch over to continuous autofocus mode, and it works blazingly fast, even for quite long focus pulls. Nice. The lens comes with quite a deep hood, and its filter size is 67mm. Overall, I loved its excellent build quality, and Sony really have thrown everything they can into this one, although some people might miss the more metallic build quality of Sony's older 90mm macro lens though. Alright, let's hear about image quality then. I'll be testing it on a full frame camera, the brutal 61MP Sony A7C-R. In-camera corrections are turned on for this test. If you want full frame images zoomed into the 42 megapixel ratio of my older reviews, by the way, for comparison purposes, then you can find a link to a special unlisted video in the description below. In the middle of the image, picture quality is razor sharp straight from f2.8 with excellent contrast. Nice. Let's have a look in the image corners then, and wow, excellent. Virtually as good as the middle. Stop down to f4 or f5.6 for improvements that are so very minuscule that you won't really see them in this video due to YouTube's encoding, but really, the image at f2.8 is fantastic enough. The lens stays about this sharp down to f11, but at f16, diffraction is really beginning to kick in. Alright, considering this is a 60 megapixel sensor, this is a 10 out of 10 performance. You can't ask for more than this. So, how about with that 2x teleconverter then? They are notorious for degrading your picture quality, but still, let's convert this lens into a 200mm f5.6 and take a look. At f5.6, central image quality is still impressive, but there is a noticeable drop in contrast and outright resolution. Stop down to f8 for sharpness and contrast to look even better though, and that's as sharp as the image in the middle gets with a teleconverter. Let's open back up to f5.6 and look over in the image corners. Alright, they're definitely looking a bit hazier with some colour fringing, exactly what you'd expect though from a 2x teleconverter, and they're actually not really bad at all. There's a little improvement at f8, stop down as far as f11 or f16 though, and a load of softness emerges due to diffraction. With the teleconverter you can actually stop down to f45 if you want to. Well, you don't want to actually. Anyway, I was pleasantly surprised by the performance with that teleconverter. They really do have a tendency to mangle your picture quality, but the image still looks very good here, although obviously it's not as sharp as the base lens alone. Okay, let's see about close-up image quality then, with my new test subject, the signature on a banknote. Firstly, without the teleconverter. At 1.4x magnification, at f2.8, image sharpness and contrast are spectacular here, as they also are at f4. At f5.6, there's a touch of softening due to the effect of diffraction. Remember, diffraction kicks in at brighter apertures the closer you are to your subject. At f8 and particularly f11, the image is getting quite soft now, but again, that's not the lens's fault, it's diffraction. For anyone interested, here's f16 and f22. Alright, let's push things to the max now and use that teleconverter to get some crazy 2.8x magnification images going. At the new maximum aperture of f5.6, despite the extra diffraction we're getting simply from shooting so very closely, the image is still very sharp indeed, although I'm also noticing a touch of purple fringing on contrasting edges. Stop down to f8 to get rid of that fringing, but at the darker aperture the image becomes softer due to, well, you know. Here's f11 and f16 and even f45. Well, you get the idea. Diffraction. Still, diffraction aside, and I don't think I've ever used that particular word so many times in one review video, this is still fantastic macro quality, and shooting at f5.6 yields nice results. Let's see about distortion and vignetting on a full frame camera then, if you're shooting in RAW or with corrections turned off. Distortion is negligible, but vignetting is definitely noticeable at f2.8. Stop down to f4 and the corners brighten up right away, and at f5.6 we get completely even brightness. How about with that teleconverter attached though? The good news is that we still see almost no distortion, and at the new maximum aperture of f5.6, vignetting is still there, but a little more under control. Stop down to f8 and the corners brighten up again. Let's see how the lens works against bright lights now. Macro lenses do not normally appreciate bright light so much, but this new Sony lens puts in a great performance. Some flaring is visible, but it's pretty translucent, leaving you with high contrast no matter where in the frame those bright lights actually are. Next up, bokeh. The quality of this lens's out of focus backgrounds seems soft to me in virtually all situations, and I didn't notice any serious problems. Specular highlights do have rather a cat's eye shape to them in the image corners though, and that can lead to busy backgrounds having a little bit of a swirly bokeh effect to them, which some people quite like. And finally, let's take a look at longitudinal chromatic aberration. As you can see, at f2.8, the lens shows some green and purple fringing on bokeh highlights. It's still there at f4, almost gone at f5.6, and actually gone at f8. Apart from that longitudinal chromatic aberration though, we are staring down a barrel of an essentially perfect macro lens here. Its spectacular optics, lightning fast autofocus, image stabilization, and extra close 1.4 times macro capability do indeed set it apart from the crowd as a perfect option if money is no object to you. And as such, for all the rich kids out there, this thing comes highly recommended. Diolch am wylio pawb. Thanks for watching everyone. Hope you enjoyed that video and found it helpful. If you regularly watch these reviews, then check out my Patreon page or channel memberships in the description below for a whole load of exclusive bonus content and of course a nice warm feeling deep inside for supporting this channel and its sponsorship free content. Ciao for now everyone.